You're listening to Up All Night. I'm Suzanne Courtney with you through till 5 a.m. Let's get the latest news now from Pakistan with Up All Night's Rani Singh.
Well, Suzanne, the Indian Prime Minister Modi and the US President Trump were both at a press conference, and they were questioned both by Indian journalists as well as by an American one about the situation in Kashmir, because Trump had said that he'd be happy to mediate if required. Modi came in quite hard to say that the issues between Pakistan and India were bilateral ones, and that's been the case since 1947. He speaks to the Pakistani Prime Minister, and he spoke to him on the Pakistani's inauguration and said that the fight for both of them is against poverty, and he made statements like that. And it was very clear that the issue was going to remain a bilateral one, despite the fact that Pakistan's been doing its best to internationalize the issue. Trump said that rather quietly, it obviously isn't his strongest point, that he was available if required.
Do you think that President Trump getting involved would help the situation?
That remains to be seen, but it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen because India is very firm. It's a done deal. Whatever's been happening in Kashmir recently has happened, and I don't think that that's going to change. And again, Modi said very clearly that the issue was between him and between his country and the Pakistanis.
So what have Pakistan been saying?
Well, Pakistan's been trying for some time to internationalize the issue, and they said that they would take it when recent events happened in Kashmir. That India's removed the special status that the part that it looked after and administered had. Following that, the Pakistani Prime Minister said that he wanted to take the issue to the International Court of Justice in The Hague. It's the legal wing of the United Nations. And last week, on August the 16th, the United Nations Security Council discussed the situation informally at the request of China, but didn't take any action. And now the point is, Suzanne, that of the 5 permanent members on the UN Security Council, 4 of them tilt heavily to the big market that's India. These 4 are the Russian Federation, the US, the UK and France, and only one, China, supports Pakistan, and that's because of geopolitical reasons. You know, one prominent Pakistani journalist told me he feels that his country's pleas for international support are really only aimed at satisfying the Pakistani domestic community and really has nothing to do with reducing the suffering of the people of Kashmir. I've been speaking to Murtaza Solangi. He's a well-known name on these matters and the former Director General of the Pakistan Broadcasting Corporation.
To me, both India and Pakistan are only interested in the piece of land called Kashmir. They seem to be more attracted to its natural resources and its geostrategic location. As I see it, the people of Kashmir and their grievances are the last and the least priority here. When I look at both India and Pakistan, both have violated their vows to Kashmiris, to each other, and the international community.
So, Rani, what is happening in the Kashmir region at the moment?
Well, there are several parts of the Kashmir region. One is administered by India and one is administered by Pakistan. And on August the 5th, India took away Indian-administered Kashmir's special status, saying that it had moved more directly under Delhi's control. And at the same time, something came into force by which non-Kashmiri citizens were allowed to move to the state and buy property there. And there was a curfew imposed, and mobiles and the internet was blocked. And things have eased a little bit now, but not too much.
So can people now make calls? Is the internet back up and running in that region, or is it still a bit patchy?
It's very patchy. There's only a certain amount of landlines that have been restored and a certain amount of the internet as well. And the 50,000 troops, which were Indian troops, which were drafted in to an already very militarized zone, are still very much there. So it's really a military state, and clashes have been happening.
So there has been a surprising fallout. There's been a war over water. Explain a little bit more.
Yes, it's the weaponization of water, and people have been calling it the water wars for years. You may have heard, Suzanne, recently about floods hitting part of northern India as well as Pakistan due to the heavy monsoon rains. Now, every year these floods can destroy entire villages. Water's vital, obviously, for the growing Indo-Pakistani population, which combined is around 1.5 billion people, and it's increasingly in short supply. Now, India's built hydroelectric stations in the part of Kashmir it administers, as this area is a main source of water to much of the South Asia region. Now, there are 3 big rivers and tributaries that flow from the Himalayan mountains into Pakistan, and 3 that flow into India. Are you with me?
Yeah, absolutely.
This was arranged, it's a bit complicated, this was arranged in a 1960 treaty brokered by the World Bank. But when floods and droughts hit, they hit both countries badly, as is happening right now. And then both countries find technical and legal reasons to blame the other, and they really go at each other, hammer and tongs. Here's Murtaza Solangi again with his take on the water wars.
Here's the problem, Rani. Almost 59 years after we had a major agreement with India signed in 1960, we are still talking about who has cheated who and who has actually worked in the letter and spirit of the water dispute. The issue is not the agreements or lack thereof. The issue is that both countries are not working together on the problems they can address if they work together. Every year we have, standing crops, livestock, and hundreds of people dying either due to massive flooding or because of the drought. Now, what we are doing on our side is those dead rivers that are not supposed to flow into Pakistan, people are planting crops and building structures in the very river beds. Now, that's insane. When you have floods, those structures and crops wash away, and then we cry foul and say, hey, here comes the Indian aggression. Instead of crying, you need to work together. Both India and Pakistan need to improve their irrigation systems. They need to have better water management. They need to protect the water reservoirs both over the surface and underground. That's the way forward. In a situation when we already have a lot of conflicts like Kashmir, and both countries have gone to wars many times, last thing we can do is to get bogged down into those silly disputes instead of working together. That's what we need to learn.
So, Rani, in 1950, the world's population of 2.5 billion produced 1.5 million tonnes of plastic. But in 2016, a global population of more than 7 billion people produced over 320 million tonnes of plastic. And you're handling plastic a little differently in Pakistan.
Yes, Suzanne, Pakistan is handling the plastic bag issue differently to the UK. In the UK, people can either choose to have a plastic bag or not, and there's a payment involved. But you'll see how it's different in my story. A recent survey, Suzanne, by the Pakistan Environmental Protection Agency found that about 55 billion plastic bags are currently being used in country, and this number is expected to increase by 15% each year. Now, awareness against plastic pollution and greenhouse gases is catching up in Pakistan. And although the country is not the biggest polluter in the world, it's still one of the countries most affected by it. Plastic pollution harms the atmosphere there, water sources, marine life, drainage, and sewage systems. Now, one of the 4 provinces in Pakistan is implementing the ban, and so is the federal government of Pakistan. It strictly enforced the ban on plastic bags in Islamabad, the national capital. And on the first day, when there were no more plastic bags available for customers, they got angry. But attitudes are changing. Now, from Islamabad, I spoke to Rina Saeed Khan. Rina's an author who received the Earth Journalism Award in Copenhagen in 2009 for her climate change writing, and she campaigns on raising environmental awareness.
Plastic bags are a real menace in Pakistan. I think from Karachi in the south to the Khunjra Pass in the high mountains of the country, there is plastic pollution everywhere. And it's the single-use polythene bag that is causing the most damage. It clogs drains, it kills wildlife, and it even causes urban flooding, as was witnessed in Karachi recently. So on August 14th, the government of Pakistan placed a ban on plastic bags in the capital, Islamabad, and eventually this ban will extend to all the other big cities. Initially, what the shopkeepers and the restaurant owners told me was that they really didn't think the government was serious about implementing the ban. But then the government decided to send out inspection teams after the Eid holidays, and they went around sort of raiding restaurants and bazaars and shopping centers and confiscating plastic bags. And so overnight, you saw a real change in attitude, and people in bazaars started carrying their own reusable cloth bags. And it seems that overnight, sort of a cottage industry has sprung up, and people are providing jute bags, they're providing cloth bags, they're providing paper bags, and all these are now widely available in all the shopping centers of the country.
So, Rani, how big a problem is plastic bag pollution? How much do you see plastic rubbish around the streets and in the countryside of Pakistan?
Suzanne, regrettably, it's not like the UK, and everywhere I go, I see plastic bags everywhere on streets, and, there are big garbage dumps everywhere. The city sanitation is not what it is in the West, and you see mounds of dumps, and they're full of plastic bags. And very sadly, there are scavengers, people who dig around these dumps looking for things to sell, really, really poor people. And of course, they see these plastic bags, and it really isn't a pretty sight at all. And also, of course, it does cause damage within, apart from that, it causes damage with drains being blocked. And, these countries are thousands of years old, and it really is sad that something that's a modern item is really polluting centuries-old land in such a way. It's very visible because obviously many of the plastic bags are coloured.
That was our very own Rani Singh with the latest news from Pakistan.